and welcome to today's program. This is a health chat program where we look at various health-related issues. And so today we look at the impact of climate change on One Health. My guest in studio is Wesley Wakonguma, who is Sustainable Livelihood Lead, coming from a project, Lower Kafue Basin MSP. Welcome to today's program.
Well, thank you so much.
We're happy to have you in studio.
I'm equally happy to be here.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that we can share with our viewers.
Oh, yes, for sure. Now, maybe to start with, the impact of climate change on One Health. What is your take?
Well, I must say that, first of all, there's a recognition at the global level, even during the just ended COP, that there is a bigger threat now on health as a result of climate change. The African group of negotiators actually raised a concern, and they're calling for, financing organizations to be able to allocate more money to the health sector because of climate change. You observe that there's an increase in flus, in colds, and a number of infections that were not very common in years past. But as the effects of climate change keep increasing, they're taking a toll on a number of things. And one of them is health-related. And so it is important that we view that with a different lens when we are discussing, be it in the schools, be it in our homes, be it in our workplace, that yes, climate change is not only affecting the rain. And now if you go and talk about climate change to people, they'll tell you kulibemvula. That's a common thing. But that most of these diseases that we have now are actually related, with the increase in the effects of climate change. There is that recognition. And when we're talking about health for all, we're not just talking about this discussion being at a clinic because you're not feeling well. But part of that surveillance really is to understand how health our ecosystems and the environment are. So you're talking of things of, indiscriminate disposal of your waste. There are a lot of diseases that come from there, and this is a very common feature. And we've seen government, time and again, launching and relaunching the Keep Zambia Clean. It's because some of those diseases are actually related much around how we keep our environment.
Wesley, we are talking of One Health, which encompasses, human health, animal health, as well as the environment. What is the connection here?
Well, I think for the longest time, I think we have all agreed that we cannot keep talking about national development in silos, where Ministry of Health or health professionals are going to sit in one place. You're going to have the veterinary guys also sitting in one place, and you're going to have a common Zambian, just complaining about health. But that if we're to achieve sustainable development, we need to look at the health of human beings, the animals, and the planet, as it was given by God to us. And so the conversation around One Health is that we're not going to discuss in isolation. If we're going to look at zoonotic diseases, we might as well look at these other diseases, that are found within the spaces where people live. So we're not going to address just public health issues relating to human beings without understanding the interaction of some of these vectors that we have, such as animals, our cows and everything. And you would agree that we've had some of those effects as a country. We had anthrax.
Yes.
That's time that you hear Zambians complain. Kulibe kudia nyama.
Yes.
Talema kudia maveg, and people would be checking.
Yes.
If at all there's any update from the Ministry of Health and Agriculture. And that just goes to show that at the time that we are and going forward, we cannot afford as a country to operate sector-based. We need to have a multi-sector based approach. And we need to have different actors coming on board. And with the issues of climate change now, the intensity of some of these effects really has potential, to derail development. And we've seen this, that you have, for example, the drought that we've experienced, the effects are still here.
Exactly.
And of course, there are still fears that we may have another drought, and we pray to God that doesn't happen that way.
It doesn't happen for sure.
Yeah, but what you begin to see is that the resource, for example, was diverted at a very serious level. We had the budget restructured, and some of those resources that you'd have seen or you'd have wanted to see going to some of these key activities within the environment sector and health were redirected. Yeah. And that just goes to show that if we do not attend to our health needs and begin to address it as one, we'll have some of these things recurring, and the intensity may actually derail us further. So we may not be able to actually achieve some of the goals that we set ourselves, for example, in the 8th National Development Plan. We may not achieve them. Talk about the Sustainable Development Goals. We're talking about 2030. Yeah. Look at what has been happening in terms of health. We've had all manner of things, including, COVID, that, destabilized the globe, the economic and social activities. Yeah. So that conversation for us is very, very important, that even the project that we'll be discussing in detail here really also does consider the health of the people.
Yeah. That brings me actually to the issue of the projects which you're looking at. Maybe just give us, an overview of what this project is all about.
Well, thank you so much. So the Lower Kafue Basin multi-stakeholder platform is a space. It's not really an office where you go to and say, I've come to the MSP. Yeah. It's a platform that has brought together actors from government, from academia, from research, from institutions that are working in the conservation space, but also with the citizens, within the Lower Kafue Basin. And when we're talking of the Lower Kafue Basin, we're talking of the lower part of the Kafue River system. Now, this is very important for us because growing up, and I'm sure you do hear stories of the Kafue Lechwe. Yes. For game meat. And you'd hear people selling game meat, and they'll come out with some of those things. Yes. Why this is important for us is that the Lower Kafue Basin is very strategic for Zambia's development. Just like the other rivers, like the Zambezi, that are transfrontier, the Kafue is within the country. It doesn't share any borders.
Actually, that's why I wanted to ask to say why Kafue.
Yeah, why Kafue is that it's in terms of economic activities, we have a lot of people that are employed based on the resources within the Kafue Basin. So you're talking of companies like Zambia Sugar, you have Kafue Sugar, you have nitrogen chemicals, you have Kalahari, one of the companies that is exploring for thermal energy. Exactly. We have the gypsum mines, we have the tourism sector that are all dependent on that system. Okay. So it's not just a river. There's a bigger story beyond the Kafue River. I mean, you're talking of 3 hydropower stations that are sitting on one river system. You have the Iteji-Teji, you have the Kafue Gorge, and the Lower Kafue. Exactly. That just shows you how important this, system is. But I think the idea of coming together is that there are then so many users that each one of them wants to have a fair share of the river. Exactly. There's not been a time that all these stakeholders have come together to a table and say, then how do we benefit from this river system? That those that are in sugar, those that are in livestock, those that are in chemical industry could actually benefit more. What you normally hear from this kind of conversations is the pollution. This one has polluted, this one has done this, but we've never gotten to a space where we can sit together and say, fine, we are all actors, we are all beneficiaries of this ecosystem. How do we see it? So the Lower Kafue MSP was set up to actually address the healthy of this ecosystem. And why this discussion is important is because there's a threat on this ecosystem. Okay. So if I took you today through the entire water system,
Yes.
you visibly see the change. So the drought, for example, 2023, 2024, just worsened everything. So you have your lagoons, you know, that have been carrying water, providing fish resources to communities for nutrition and for income. And you have livestock farmers. You're talking of, I mean, if you look at Namwala, for example, Mazabuka, Monze, you have the biggest livestock farmers in that area who actually depend on the Kafue ecosystem. And that system is dry. So what you have now is just the Kafue flowing itself without these supportive streams, lagoons, and other aquatic bodies. And that's why for us, I think it is very important, because we need to begin to look at how do we rejuvenate that kind of an ecosystem to still be able to provide employment. You need your brothers and sisters and parents to still work for nitrogen chemicals, for the power utility. You still want to get your beef, the best beef. You still want to plant your crops. You still want to get your sugar from this system. So this whole platform for us is very, very important. And one of the projects that now we are working on is what is known as the aquatic, you know, food system for a healthy people and a healthy planet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Looking at that, this is a pilot project, I suppose. How is it going to benefit or to enhance people's livelihood in terms of food security, you know, as well as water systems? How is it going to benefit the people there?
Yeah, I think from the onset we must indicate that there have been a number of institutions operating in the Kafue ecosystem. And we do appreciate everything else that has been done to help recover that system. But I think there's a uniqueness that we want to talk about.
Which is?
When we look at the benefits, is that this platform has never been.
Okay.
So you had a system where you don't know who's doing what, and what impact. They would report. I mean, all institutions would report at individual level to themselves, their directors, or whoever makes up those institutions. But we lacked a system that would bring everyone together, especially the users who are normally vulnerable, marginalized.
In most cases.
In most cases. So what this seeks to do is that once we have the voices of the local people as part of this conversation, begin to imagine what kind of benefits. Because if, for example, there's pollution of the water system, who gets to suffer? It's the local people. But imagine you give those people a voice to speak for themselves and begin to determine the kind of future that they envisage or they want. You end up reaping a lot of benefits. So we think that we're going to re-engineer the kind of activities that are happening in the ecosystem to be ones that are going to ensure that people remain healthy. You can't have an ecosystem that has sick people throughout.
For sure. It will not work.
Productivity goes down. So you want your cattle headers, for example, to enjoy good health. So we want to be able to say, Ministry of Health, what is it that is happening in this? There's an outbreak of this disease. We want to see, maybe the local people actually want to see government responding quickly. And so we will need to be able to say, okay, fine, if actor A is not able to move in, what are the challenges? So this multi-stakeholder platform should begin to look at, you know, those bottlenecks that make it difficult to provide certain services in as far as health is concerned for the people. So when we're talking about benefits, I think we want to be able to say that we have a unique approach that allows the people to say, hey, we live here, we've grown up in this place, but we don't get service A, don't get service B. In fact, what we are getting is more of distraction of a lifeline that we've depended on for many years.
I know we've mentioned of, you know, food security, water security. Maybe can you point to one or two benefits economically and that which they can get from the environmental itself, environmental benefits.
Yeah, so let's look at the value
Yeah.
in terms of aquatic food systems. You hear, if you go to any restaurant, at least in Zambia,
Seafood.
well, we don't have a sea, yeah, but at least we have some crayfish.
Oh, yeah, we do.
In the
We
Kafue river system. But
Yes.
for the longest time, I mean, I grew up part of my life in Kafue, going to a primary school. We used to eat tunchenga.
Oh, yes. Do we even have that?
That's a question we must be asking. Why don't we see them?
We don't see them anymore.
No, we don't, because our ecosystem is compromised.
Okay.
The breeding is compromised.
Yeah.
So when you look at the immediate benefits for people, for example, who entirely have depended on that
Dependent
system,
on the system, yes.
is that you have a situation now where the breeding areas for fish have been compromised because of the human settlements, the human activities, including burning.
Yes.
The president has been complaining about burning in the Kafue Basin. It's very rampant.
Okay.
If I took you there right now, you'll still see the effects of burning
Of
in
burning.
September and October,
Goodness.
which burnt all the breeding grounds. So how does your fish then breed?
It can't survive.
Yeah, so one of the immediate benefits is that we are mobilizing, and the communities are actually mobilizing to begin to work on actions that are going to reverse some of these activities that have been, prevalent in the ecosystem. And one of them is to build stronger structures.
Okay.
And these structures are based on the community-based natural resource management models, which allows the local people to have a voice
Okay.
in terms of how they manage their resources. And we are very lucky as a country that we have legislation, and policy that supports the participation of the local
The
people.
local people, yes.
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 But so you will then say, if the local people have a voice, why are things not changing?
Not changing for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot that we need to work on in terms of behavioral change.
Yeah.
And the interactions of our different cultures. By the way, that's an ecosystem that has accommodated people from across the country.
Oh.
So you have people coming in, for example, from Isoka.
Okay.
They come, not that they have bad manners, no, but everyone comes with their own behaviors.
Exactly.
And there's a clash, and people do the most horrible things in the ecosystem. So we think that with people getting on board, they will be able to identify what are those cultures that people come with that are detrimental to the ecosystem.
To the ecosystem.
But they can't be discussed in isolation. You cannot have this tribal group sitting in this, in this space. But we allow a platform where the locals themselves then say, when we were growing up, we never used to do this.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, this is how we used to catch fish. So some of those behaviors that we want to see
The
is...
different type of catching fish using other methods.
Yes,
and everything.
we need to, we have legislation actually
Yes.
in this country on the type of ways you're supposed to use to catch your fish.
Okay.
But we see people catching fish using mosquito nets.
That's the thing.
These
That's the
chitenges you
thing.
wear
Exactly. We
at
use
kitchen
them.
parties
We use them.
are used for catching fish.
You see?
So we need to address some of those. And ideally, we want to think they cannot be addressed until we have stronger local institutions.
Local
And
engagement.
our traditional leaders have the biggest voice. And I must tell you actually that leadership is everything
Oh, yes.
in changing the course
Oh,
of
yes. Oh, yes.
development.
Okay.
And that's one of the benefits that we hope to see, that we'll have stronger leadership within these communities to actually address some of these issues.
Right. I like the fact that you've mentioned the involvement of the locals, because we are dealing with this group of people who are supposed to have benefits from the projects which you are doing. But I believe even when you are doing all these things, there should be some potential, risks or maybe dangers as to, advancing your core in this project. What could those be?
Yeah, so one of the risks, or people always say, projects have been done, we don't see any change.
For sure.
In fact, if it's poaching in some of these areas, you see an increase.
That's the thing.
Because then you'll be accused, no, this 4x4s.
You know?
Everybody is getting something. And we're cognizant of the fact that if we keep doing things the same way, we will not get any change or any results that we've been hoping to get. And we want to believe that as an MSP, one of the things that we must be able to do is to build the capacity of the local people. Our role must be to facilitate the process.
Okay.
The ownership of all these interventions is the local people.
Yeah.
If you get a chance to be with us in the field, you'll be able to see how eager the local people themselves are to chart their way forward. But one of the challenges that you need to understand is that when you look at the entire ecosystem, you have a lot of people migrating into that area from other parts of the country.
Okay.
So, for example, you've heard of the cane cutters, that they are from Kalabo, Manyengo brothers. Okay. Those are the guys who will be cutting. So they'll come with their own beliefs. They'll come with their own way of doing things. Okay. You have maybe people coming in from Miombe and others. But if the locals themselves cannot sit down with everybody else that comes and says, this is how we live, this is our culture. If we leave it to, one Zambia, one nation, then free for all, you have a lot of those challenges. And we think that while the local people may not necessarily determine who stays where, they should have a say using the traditional systems that they have. And to avert some of those risks that you see that a project is not doing anything, is that from the onset, we have worked with their Royal Highnesses. We're working with about 7 chiefdoms. And I must express our gratitude as an MSP to all the chiefs and the traditional leaders, in the project areas that we are covering, that they've been forthcoming. We've met a number of them, joyful times. But you hear their cry that the Kafue Basin is no longer the same.
It's not there anymore.
It's not giving the environmental benefits that it was giving them. I mean, if you look at 2019 to now, people have not been catching as much fish as they used to. So what has changed? Are we going to create new industries? No. Those people are dependent on that system.
On the system,
So they should be able to be given the capacity to re-engineer the processes of how they live, of how they interact with these resources. So the power really is in the hands of the people.
Of the people.
Yeah.
We've talked of engaging the community and traditional leadership and everything else. But again, amongst the people, I believe there should be some human-animal conflict issues. Which departments, or are we involving government in this whole process to see to it that at least we enhance the works that we are doing in this project?
Yeah, like I indicated earlier, this is a multi-stakeholder platform that has actually a higher presence of government. We have the Ministry of Green Economy, we have the Ministry of Tourism, we have the Ministry of Local Government through the Chief's Affairs, the Department of National Parks. I mean, it's very prevalent. The ecosystem hosts the largest national park in this country, the Kafue National Park. And the department is charged. I'm not speaking as their representative, but speaking from the interactions.
Interaction which we've had.
We have is that there are a number of initiatives that are happening. You may be aware that there's a private partner, or private partners that they have in the national park that are supporting the patrols, that are supporting the community services. They do provide, extension support to communities in that area. And We know that human-wildlife conflict is very prevalent in some of these communities. Yes. And from the work that the MSP has been doing is then to say, communities, you've lived with these animals, and you will continue living with them.
Exactly.
How best can you live in harmony?
Interact.
So the issue of One Health cannot be achieved if one part of the community says we can't live with this.
The other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we need to then say, okay, fine. How do you live together without actually compromising the other resource?
Exactly.
We're not saying shoot every buffalo you see, every hippo you see, but I'm sure the department has a mechanism through which they engage those people. And from the food security side, it's a concern for us.
Exactly.
We have people that go fishing. We don't want to hear they've been hammered by a hippo. They've been attacked by crocodiles.
Yes.
So you need to realize that to achieve a healthy, ecosystem in that area, we need people to understand how do they interact with every other resource.
Exactly.
How do we live in harmony with the hippos?
Everything, exactly.
I mean, I've had interactions with people and saying, do you know that croc meat is very tasty?
I hear so.
And people say, no,
I hear so.
how should you be talking about Ichibokolo? It's Ichibokolo, isn't it?
Yes,
Members who call it Ichibokolo.
It is.
And I say, no, forget about the stories of your uncle being attacked by this, this croc.
Yeah.
But begin to look at it as, okay, fine, we're living with it. Is there any way we can enhance our livelihoods using this resource? And one of the thoughts that we've had, I mean, we've been in the basin of this period. If you look at the Chunga Lagoon, which sits in the Lokimva National Park,
Yes.
you have the Gwisha Hot Springs.
Yes.
You have your harbor days on Mondays and Thursdays. And our thinking is, can the communities actually have enhanced livelihoods? Yes, they can. So if, for example, you're going to buy your fish at Chunga, and your day is on a Monday, why don't you arrive on Sunday? Because we know you already arrive actually on Sundays. Why don't you have, some time to visit the Gwisha Hot Springs? Have some time within that environment, refresh yourself, and Monday buy your fish and move out. But that can only happen if there is harmony between how people people and the other, species in the ecosystem do interact.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be a policeman and a thief relationship.
That kind of a relationship.
That immediately you see a croc, you want to throw stones, you want to throw spears, you want to shoot at it. No, but to be able to say, wow, how do we enhance the experiences of the visitors coming into our ecosystem?
Space.
Yes. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we're looking at livelihoods, that you must be happy that you've gone to the national park. Exactly. You must be happy that you have gone to the basin. You are interacting with these resources that can enhance your livelihoods and your incomes. Yes.
Exactly. Well, I know we've talked of so many issues here, and the issue of One Health really cannot be separated or cannot be talked about in isolation from the other part. How much sensitization have we done to the locals to see to it that they appreciate the work that we're doing in that area? Well,
I must say that there's always a beginning to achieving what you want, and people need to know, what are you doing? What is it that you want to achieve? So the multi-stakeholder platform has created working groups. And we have 3 working groups, one of which I lead, which is the Sustainable Livelihoods. I'm a lead, not that I'm a leader. No. I lead in terms of the thought process, the facilitations, and making sure that all these interventions that we're looking at are done. We have another group on knowledge and information. We have another group that is working on the conservation aspects. Now, I'll briefly talk about these three groups and how they interact in terms of providing support for knowledge and awareness. So we look at livelihoods. The other team looks at dissemination. Now, it's difficult to disseminate what you don't know.
Exactly.
And why it is important for us to work together as a team is that, and I'll bring you back to your question, why the Kafue?
Why the Kafue indeed?
Beautiful ecosystem, but it's highly threatened. You have the mimosa that has choked the system. Remember the Kafue weed times?
Oh yes, the Kafue weed.
Took away the beauty of our system.
Exactly.
We have, on the other side, this invasive species that has been growing and, choking the system, the animals, the birds, and we are glad there's a partner, the International Crane Foundation, and others that are working, on removing this, and we appreciate those efforts. But what we have done is to begin to work on a consolidated program, and the last 1 week, in fact, let me say the last 2 weeks is what we've been working on. That the three groups can then harmonize to make sure that the locals know what we are doing.
Exactly.
For example, how do you do with invasive species? They may have a benefit for your firewood because there are no bigger trees in that area. So
not anymore.
We finished everything.
Everything.
Don't tell me God took them away. No, we cut.
It is us as humans.
Yes. So how do we then harness that resource? Well, we trying to remove it. We're talking of some invasive species of fish that are in there.
Yes.
If you go there right now, we have the crayfish. It's in there. And our fishermen just look at it and throw it back, and they're so annoyed that their net, is tearing apart because of these. And these are invasive and they are very dangerous to an extent they can just cut off your finger. Yeah, so, but we're seeing that there's an opportunity to actually do something about that.
Okay.
Do people eat crayfish? Yes, they do. So part of our sensitization is really meant to help people understand and appreciate that they have resources they've lived with. They live with many generations, but they may not have them in the next generation.
For sure.
Because of the attitudes,
Very, very true.
the practices
Very, very true.
that we attach to how we harvest some of these resources. So we are working on a very systematic communications plan that is working on the very different thematic areas, but also trying to look at how do we enhance this thin line that cuts across, all these types of interventions. And that's you and me, the people that are living in that area. For example, who's touching
those places?
Yes.
It is us as humans.
Who's doing it?
It's the locals.
Are people driving in from Osaka to set fires?
The locals.
No, it's the locals. Yeah. So how do we get them to appreciate? And we're very happy, actually, that government has legislated some of these things. That now, if you set fires anyhow, you can go in for 14 years.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
But who knows about that?
Very few.
Very few. So part of that approach we have is that we're trying to simplify the legislation and the policies that exist supporting our work, that people can understand them. And our approach is to use local radios, use platforms such as this one, and we're so grateful to Zanis for according us a chance to be able to come and feature.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at those avenues that will allow people to appreciate. Given the jargon that exists in all these things, but we can get my grandmother in that village to understand that a wumpa is not the right thing to do.
Exactly.
You can do it in a controlled way.
In a controlled way.
Yes, but not doing where just burn and you go home.
And that's it. And that's it.
And we ask you, why did you burn? I just burned.
You know?
Yeah, but now saying I just did it would land you
in problems.
In problems.
14 years.
Yes, you can go in. I mean, we have seen a lot of efforts. You remember issues of cattle rustling within the ecosystem. People would still. So here is a family that's trying to survive. There are 4 heads of cattle, and you come and steal.
You know.
Where do they get the money from? Now, the new laws are there.
Yeah.
Non-bailable. So we need people to understand that if you steal, you go in. If you burn, you go in. If you're going to use this kind of a net, you go in. Yeah, but we don't want to take this approach that sounds like it's
very
military.
Threatening.
No.
Yeah.
But we don't have the power to enforce those laws. But to just make people aware that within this ecosystem, there is legislation that supports some of these, resources, and that anything that you do to compromise may land you in jail.
No problem.
Yes.
From what you've, spotted out, I'm sure you have done some sensitization in some ways, or in a way. How has been the response from the locals so far?
Well, I must say that it's an amazing place to work in.
Okay.
Amazing people. People that are yearning to listen. And then you start wondering, were they not listening previously?
Then,
why are they
happened?
listening now?
Exactly.
Because the threats on their livelihoods are more than ever.
Okay. More visible.
They are more visible now. They know if we don't respond, then we're doomed. So people now are looking at how do we, get to reverse some of these things. So you see that appetite. People saying, and they acknowledge we did this to our ecosystem, and we are the only ones that can reverse it. And I think the 2023-2024 drought, just marked the beginning of changing people's hearts.
I'm looking at this project, which looks to be more beneficial to the locals. Are we seeing you replicating this to other places in the country? Because we do have places that will actually need such kind of effort from your project.
Yeah, we are aware that there are a number of initiatives in most of the ecosystems. If you talk again about the Tanganyika, for example, there's a bigger project. If you look at the North Luangwa, South Luangwa, there are all these bigger interventions. And apart from replicating maybe this unique approach, we want to also see how we can learn from some of these interventions that have been applied elsewhere, but also giving the local people an opportunity to visit some of these areas. I'm aware that some of the partners like Komako, for example, took some of the community members from Mwezwa in Iteji to visit the Eastern Province, and we're hoping that a number of other partners can actually engage in this cross-cultural learning, where you take one group to also be able to see. And I think this is on the basis that our Bemba brothers and sisters, so I wished I could explain more, more than that. But I think it is important to learn by seeing. And this is how we've learned most of the stuff that we know from other people. How have they done it? So there's this drought now. Your water levels are low. You cannot catch as much fish I used to do before, maybe 2019.
Exactly.
How do we resuscitate a system like that one to still be able to give benefits now? So we're hoping that we can, much as we are learning from what we are doing, we can also learn from what other people are doing, but that calls for resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really quite mouthful. I'm sure someone has picked one or two things from what you've explained. Maybe, what would be your last word to the general public?
Well, there's never a last word, actually. There's always a last word. And we want to say that as an MSP, first of all, we are very grateful to International Water Management Institute, our partners, and Wildfish that have been very, very instrumental in facilitating the learning processes, the resources, and I must say that we did receive, some seed funds to help us kickstart some of these interventions.
Okay.
And we're hoping that we can get to a level, especially in 2025 going forward, where we can mobilize enough resources to attain to some of these interventions, where people not just sit and listen, but they can engage in some of businesses that can help them recover from the effects of this drought and, of course, the climate change so that they can continue to live, because they'll live.
Definitely.
They will not all come and live in the city. The city does not have enough
have
space. We're already overstretched in terms of municipal services. You've seen how much we have.
Yeah.
And so we're so grateful, and also grateful to their Royal Highnesses, grateful to the actors that we're working with from Copperbelt University, Kapasa Makasa University, the Forest Department, the ministries themselves, and the local people. And we want to believe that working together is the only way that will help us achieve the restoration of the Lower Kafue ecosystem.
Wow, that was really, really great. And I know it was the last of the words that you had mentioned. Anyway, thank you so much, Wesley, for appearing on our program.
Totally grateful.
Today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, viewers, we've come to the end of today's program. We're looking at the impact of climate change on One Health. I had Wesley Wakongoma, who is the Sustainable Livelihood Lead. And from me and the Interproduction team, it's goodbye.